It has been almost a year since we've done one of these, and obviously a ton of money has been given out this offseason. A lot of guys have signed new deals, so I figured now would be a good time for a new installment in the overpaid or underpaid series. If you've never seen one of these videos before, it's a pretty simple concept. You guys name me some players, and I go through those players and talk about if I think they are overpaid or underpaid, with a heavy focus on players who signed new deals this offseason. And before we get started, if this is your first time checking out the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm setting a goal of trying to hit 90,000 subscribers by the end of this upcoming season, and I can't do that without your guys' help. So if you enjoy this type of content, hit that subscribe button. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off the video with the first comment from Bloke Insane, who says, just because I want to hear you rant about how bad this contract is, Cody Cece overpaid or underpaid? So we're starting off with a pretty obvious one here. I did actually give my thoughts on this signing back in early July when I made my free agency review, but we'll talk about it again quickly here. $4.5 million per season for Cody Cece is definitely an overpay. He is the second highest paid defenseman on the LA Kings now, behind only Drew Doughty. And the fact that Cody Cece was not able to just get $4.5 million, but $4.5 million for the next 4 years is absolutely insane to me. I'm sure Cody Cece would be fine as a depth defenseman, somebody who's probably not in the lineup every night, and when he is in the lineup, averages around 15 to 16 minutes a night. But for whatever reason, teams continue to overpay him and overplay him. He's averaged over 20 minutes per game in each of the last 4 seasons. At this point, I'm starting to think that Cody Cece and his agent may have some dirt on Ken Holland, because back in the summer of 2021, Cody Cece was signed to a 4-year deal with a cap of $3.25 million per season. He signed that deal with the Oilers, and at the time, the GM of the Oilers was Ken Holland. So this is now the second time that Ken Holland has signed Cody Cece to a 4-year deal in free agency, and honestly, I feel like this most recent deal that Cece signed with the Kings is more egregious than the one Ken Holland signed him to back in 2021 with the Oilers. For the LA Kings' sake, I hope Cody Cece thrives there and can give them serviceable minutes on the right side, because on paper, their blue line does not look great after losing Gavrikov and Jordan Spence and bringing in the likes of Cece and Dumoulin. Moving on now to the next comment. This one comes from Chris F, who says, overpaid or underpaid Kappo Kako at $4.5 million for the next 3 years. This is kind of a tough one for me. After being traded from the Rangers to the Kraken, Kako had a really strong second half. He finished the season with Seattle scoring 10 goals and putting up 30 points in 49 games. And it was also the first time in his entire career, really, that we've seen him get consistent top 6 minutes for a long period of time. He averaged over 17 minutes of ice time per game with the Kraken. So as long as he continues to get those consistent minutes, I don't see any reason why Kappo Kako can't be in the 20-goal, 50-point range for Seattle year in and year out. And I would say that's pretty solid production for $4.5 million per season, especially from a guy who is capable of being a very solid defensive winger as well. Moving on now to the next comment. This one comes from Noah, who says, Dylan Samberg, I think he's quite underrated for just how good he is defensively and his impact for the Jets. I'm going to go ahead and say underpaid. I think $5.75 million for Dylan Samberg for the next 3 years is a really good deal for Winnipeg. He really emerged this past season as not only one of their most important defensemen, but I think one of the more important players on the entire roster. He finished the season putting up a career-high 20 points in 60 games while getting next to no time on the power play. Only one of those 20 points came with the man advantage. But obviously, when it comes to Dylan Samberg, any offense that he provides is really just an added bonus, because where he really makes his impact for the Jets is on the defensive side of things. He is an elite defensive defenseman, a very effective penalty killer, and really just somebody that the Jets can trust in all situations. Having him and Josh Morrissey as your top 2 defensemen on the left side is such a luxury and should allow them to have a very good top 4 for the foreseeable future. Ideally, in a perfect world, I'm sure a lot of Jets fans would have preferred this to be a longer term deal, because with this only being a 3-year deal, Dylan Samberg is going to be a UFA at age 29. But at the very least, for the next 3 years, I think Winnipeg is going to get fantastic value having Dylan Samberg signed for $5.75 million per season. This next comment comes from Aaron, who says, Sam Bennett overpaid or underpaid $8 million AAV. I might catch a bit of heat for this one, but I'm definitely going to say overpaid. I think $8 million per season is a lot for a guy who's only ever hit the 50-point mark one time in a season. His insane playoff run this year, where he scored 15 goals in 23 games and won the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoffs MVP, obviously played a huge part in him getting this massive deal. With that all being said though, just because I think it is an overpay, that doesn't mean I think this is a bad contract for the Panthers. I think if you're a team like Florida, this is a deal you sign 10 out of 10 times, because you're obviously not paying Sam Bennett for what he's done and what he's going to continue to do in the regular season. They're paying him this much because they know how important he is for them come playoff time, and like I said, we saw that this year. So for a team like the Panthers, it definitely makes more sense to overpay a bit to keep Sam Bennett around than lose him, because they are in their cup contention window right now, and they know how important of a piece Sam Bennett is to that core. Now, let's say Sam Bennett signed this identical contract with a team like Buffalo, Detroit, or Anaheim, a team that isn't really viewed as a lock to make the playoffs next season. I definitely wouldn't be sitting here saying the same thing. In all likelihood, it probably would have turned out to be a disaster. Imagine if he did sign with one of those teams and they miss the playoffs next season and Sam Bennett only finishes in the 50-point range. This is a contract that would have quickly been looked at as one of the worst in the league. Moving on now to the next comment. This one comes from Busy, who says, Vladislav Gavrikov being paired with Fox will elevate both of their games, and with the cap rising after this season, $7 million could end up looking like a steal. Curious to hear your thoughts. I'm kind of in the same boat as you are, especially with the cap on the rise and Gavrikov coming off of what was probably the best season he's had in his entire career. I think the Rangers got a really good deal here, so I'm going to say underpaid. I really believe that a Gavrikov-Fox pairing has the potential to be one of the best pairings in the entire NHL. Gavrikov is elite defensively. He was an absolute beast for the LA Kings this past season, averaging over 23 minutes of ice time per game. Definitely not somebody who's going to go out there and put up, 50 to 60 points and quarterback a team's top power play unit, but he's not a black hole offensively either. He's a good puck mover. He's had a couple of seasons in his career where he's hit the 30-point mark. He should be a great fit on the Rangers, as he really is exactly the kind of defenseman that team has been in desperate need of to pair alongside Adam Fox. Moving on now to the next comment. This one comes from Mono the God, who says, Yanni Gourd's new extension, overpaid or underpaid? This is definitely an interesting one. So Yanni Gourd signed a 6-year extension with the Lightning back in June with an AAV of $2.33 million. And I feel like, at least as of right now, I gotta go with underpaid here. I think $2.33 million for what Yanni Gourd is at this stage of his career is still an absolute steal. He plays a very strong 200-foot game. He's a tenacious forechecker, elite penalty killer, and is obviously capable of chipping in a bit of offense as well. At least for the first few years of this deal, he should be a very effective third-line center for the Lightning. But given the fact that Yanni Gourd is already 33 years old, I can't imagine this is a deal that ages very well, as he's going to be 39 when this deal is up. But for a team like Tampa, it makes sense to give Gourd that kind of term to keep the AAV down, as in the final few years of this contract, they're likely not going to be in their contention window anymore anyways. Moving along now to the next comment. This one comes from Captain Poppy, who says, how about the Carolina Hurricanes extensions for young players Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake? Over or under? Both 8-year extensions that won't kick in until the 2026-27 season. Jackson Blake's deal carries an AAV of $5.12 million, and Logan Stankoven's has an AAV of $6 million. And I'm actually a pretty big fan of both of these extensions for the Hurricanes. Both Jackson Blake and Logan Stankoven have already shown a lot of promise at the NHL level, and I actually think Jackson Blake was one of the more underrated rookies in the entire NHL this past season. Both of these guys are going to be very important pieces of the Hurricanes core moving forward. And even if neither of them break out into legitimate stars and they're just solid top 6 forwards, these are still going to be phenomenal deals for the Hurricanes with the cap going up. This next comment comes from Wixie, who says, do you think Brock Nelson is getting over or underpaid? As an Avs fan, I think $7.5 million AAV is too much for him, but what are your thoughts? I'm right there with you. I definitely think this was a bit of an overpay by the Avalanche, especially considering the fact that they gave him 3 years on this deal. Now, Nelson was still really solid this past season, but not as good as he's been in the few years prior to this past season, and at 33 years old, I think it's safe to assume his best years are behind him. Now, similar to what I said about the Sam Bennett signing with Florida, just because I think Colorado overpaid here doesn't mean I think it was a bad move by them. I definitely think overpaying a bit to keep Nelson around for the next 3 years was a better outcome for them than if Brock Nelson would have just walked in free agency. It would have left a huge hole for Colorado at the number 2 center position, and it would have been a tough pill for the Avalanche to swallow, giving up Callum Ritchie, who was their best prospect, and a first-round draft pick for a rental. So I definitely think bringing Brock Nelson back was an important piece of business for them, and they got it done. Moving on on now to the next comment. This one comes from Chris Boots, who says, Alex Vacic, contract isn't up till 2030 and making 4.6 mil, potentially the future captain and leader of Blackhawks young D-core. Yeah, this one is a no-brainer. Definitely going with underpaid here, and I would actually go as far as saying I think this is one of the better contracts in the entire Central Division. At just 24 years old, Alex Vacic has already emerged as a legit top pairing guy for the Blackhawks, averaging over 23 minutes a night this past season and putting up a career high in points with 30. And it's not like the Blackhawks have been a very good team throughout the first 2 seasons of Vacic's career either. Like, these are tough minutes he's playing on a bad team, and it's not like he's just treading water and just barely getting by. He's thriving in these minutes. Moving along now, this next comment comes from Michael Keller, who says, Trent Frederick's contract looked horrible, but seeing how many mid players signed after him for more money, he looks underpaid and will basically be league minimum in 8 years. Thoughts? I see what you're getting at, but I'm still not a huge fan of the Trent Frederick deal. 8 years, $3.85 million, I think, is a lot for a guy who's coming off of a down year where he was injured. Generally, in most cases, when teams sign, bottom 6 guys to these long-term extensions, it's to keep the AAV down. So I was definitely surprised when the Oilers not only gave him 8 years, but also still had to give him nearly $4 million per season. Now, that's not to say I don't think Trent Frederick can be an impactful player for the Oilers, because I definitely think he can be. He plays a premium position, he's a big body, he's tough to play against, and if he can get back to playing at the level he played at for the Boston Bruins from 2022 to 2024, then I think at least the first few years of this deal should be more than fine. But until we see that happen, I gotta go with overpaid here. And now finally finishing up the video with the last comment from Kelly, who says, Ecklund extension, 3 years, 5.6 mil per season, and his extension actually won't kick in until the 2026-27 season. And I'm definitely gonna go with underpaid here. Usually when it comes to young players like Ecklund, when they're signed to extensions, teams are paying them not for what they've done up until that point, but for what they expect them to do and what they expect them to develop into in the future. But when it comes to William Ecklund, I think you can make the case that this past season he was already worth $5.6 million. He finished second on the Sharks in scoring with 58 points in 77 games. The only player who had more points than him was Macklin Celebrini. And like I said, this Ecklund extension doesn't kick in until the 2026-27 season, and by then I could legitimately see a scenario where William Ecklund is a bona fide top line guy who's around a point per game player. And if that's the case, then $5.6 million per season for that kind of player is obviously an absolute steal. It is only a 3-year extension though, so when this deal is up, Ecklund is going to be 26 and he's going to be an RFA, so at that time the Sharks are probably going to have to back up the Brinks truck. So that is going to wrap up this edition of NHL Overpaid or Underpaid. As always, when it comes to these interactive videos, huge thank you to everyone who left a comment on the community tab post. You all make these videos so much fun for me to make. If you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.